The scholar stone, or landscape rock bound to Ki-woo, is the most overt metaphor in Bong Joon Ho's already richly symbolic body of work. It ties for the most metaphorical stone of the year with the opal in Uncut Gems.
That's the rock, that's the stone. I got it.
But the Safdies didn't call theirs out. A metaphor states that one thing is another thing. And most of the pleasure of seeing metaphorical work on screen is to solve the puzzle by yourself. Yet Bong subverts that expectation in the first few minutes of the film. It's bold, but it comes as no surprise from the man who'll create a Steve Buscemi-like river monster as a physical manifestation of Korea's relationship with the US.
I can't give any of that information without the approval of the United States.
A super pig to indict factory farming. Or a train to stand for capitalism on wheels. There's nothing subtle about these specific metaphors. Bong's success, however, comes not from his broad socio-political allegories, but the true-to-life characters that play out these conceptual puzzle boxes. The bleakly mixed and unrelenting conclusions, the variety of symbols, their complexity and unpredictability.
진짜 상징적이다. 진짜 센데요.
그쵸, 세죠.
Okja and the Host contain Bong's most extreme metaphorical creations. Two creatures, genetically engineered, large enough to carry his broadest metaphors. On the realist end of the spectrum is Memory of Murder's Monster, based on a real-life serial killer who was only caught 15 years after the film was made. The monster was never shown. Could be him, or him, or him. Could be anyone. Even you, the person watching. At least that's what the final shot suggests. A faceless, shapeless metaphor that stands in for the banality of evil. His first metaphorical creature, though, was at the center of his debut feature.
좋아. 그럼 호들 까서 이 유리컵에 꽉 채워. 그럼 나가도 돼.
The angst of our lead protagonist had been steadily rising before the film begins. Yoon-ju reaches his breaking point when he hears the embodied sound of hell. A dog and his bark are the representation of the gnawing sensation that life's direction is out of his grasp. On a different level, the film is the first hint at a 20-year-long career concerned with economic injustice and pecking orders. Like many of director Bong's characters, Yoon-ju is right down the totem pole, but the dog is even lower, so he gets the shorter end of the stick.
도장 찍어주세요.
That dynamic in this film and others is also conveyed by spatial organization. The train in Snowpiercer is a microcosm of the last remaining inhabitants of the planet. Its compartments represent socioeconomic groupings, from the poorest masses in the back all the way to the 1% at the head of the train.
10ヶ月、10年。10年間、僕はうちの中で暮らしている。
This hikikomori finally steps out after 10 years of isolation. That ivy-covered house is a mirror to the character, the embodiment of the emotional decay brought on by loneliness. But if there's a metaphorical structure we can pin to the Korean director's work, it's basements. In cinema, vertical structures are often used as allegories for social hierarchy. So in a building, a subterranean room is lowest. In barking dogs, violence, theft, dog lynching, those are all basement activities. In here, there's no place for morality nor economic prosperity. A tier above it is the sub-basement, very common in South Korea and, according to Bong, full of subtleties. People live underground, but want to believe that they are above the ground because they have a moment when sunlight comes into their room. In Parasite, that's our hero's starting point. Basements are naturally dark, artificially cramped rooms. Director Bong infuses them with allegorical power by juxtaposition with light, space, and nature. The rich have access to all of it, the poor very little, and the poorest, whether in his first film or the last, none at all. It's no coincidence that both begin and end with camera moves that show nature, or at least a hint of the outside world, only to reveal our characters trapped within these artificial structures. There's no escape. One can only navigate them in straight lines, up and down, left and right, back and forwards. When a character has to decide between the comfort of what's familiar and the perils of the unknown, they can look backwards and forwards. The way the camera moves, or the characters move within the frame, have obvious and clear connotations. In Okja, Mija is one of the few fighting the impersonal factory farming system. Direction makes it clear what she's up against. All of director Bong's works are stories about systems and capitalism. In a way, even his more contained family dramas like Mother.
저기요, 이런 데 계시면 안 되는 분인데.
Yet only Snowpiercer and Parasite extensively use direction to illustrate the horrors of the one-directional nature of capitalism.
We must each of us occupy our preordained particular position.
Inside a train, a character will advance within the system by going right and retreat by going left. In the turning points where the decision to continue a rebellion is in the balance, the hero will look right and left before making it. In modern-day Korea, that's shown by going up and down, a more intuitive and almost redundant allegory. It's hard to miss how Bong uses stairs to evoke social climbing or falling. Not to mention the recurring pans to highlight the social divisions between characters. What's more indicative and revealing about the thought processes at the core of these films is the change in direction during the climax. The one-directional nature of these films visually manifests society's oppressiveness.
I saw them.
When? Where?
Came through there, went through there.
For the most part, the characters go along, do what's required of them, play their role.
Curtis, everyone has their preordained position. And everyone is in their place except you.
아무튼 그 양반 전반적으로 많은 행동이 선을 넘을 듯 말 듯 하면서도 결국엔 절대 선을 안 넘거든. 그건 좋아. 인정. 근데 냄새가 선을 넘지 냄새가.
But instead of not crossing the line, of going up and down the stairs, up and down the hierarchy, one character will discover the way out.
이쪽 문을 여는 거야. 이 바깥으로 나가는 문들 말이야. 이게 이제 무슨 벽처럼 생각하게 됐는데 사실은 저도 문이란 말이지.
For Bong, the structure of capitalism blinds you to any alternative, but despite the dire consequences, there's always an escape. In Parasite, when the poor father realizes his smell, yet another metaphor, will always alert others of his social status, his choice also ends up metaphorically destroying the system.
Nice.
None of what has been discussed so far makes Bong an interesting director. In 10 seconds, George Carlin does a better job at condensing the trappings of capitalism than Bong in 7 features. Listen in.
The upper class keeps all of the money, pays none of the taxes. The middle class pays all of the taxes, does all of the work. The poor are there just to scare the shit out of the middle class.
Bong's broader metaphors only ring true because of the wonderfully complex nature of the worlds he creates and the opaque meanings of his other symbols and allegories. Take the intensely subjective imagery of a fish being gutted before a fight and think about its slapstick conclusion. That's a head-scratcher. Or take the stone we started with.
근데 특히 이돌은 가정에 많은 재물운과 합격운을 몰고 다니면서
It brings the Kim's luck, but also terrible calamities. What does that mean?
이거요?
The stone holds on to Ki-woo.
얘가 자꾸 나한테 달라붙는 거예요.
It's a metaphor but also a weapon. One that can be turned against its holder. Ki-woo gets rid of it, yet not of the dreams of wealth the rock symbolizes.
야, 이거 진짜 상징적인 거네.
Is it even metaphorical? Sanju can also be literally translated as symbolic. Is there a difference? Well, yes. But what exactly does it symbolize? Ki-woo calls something metaphorical or symbolic twice more.
진짜 상징적이다. 진짜 쓴데. 침팬지를 그린 거죠?
자화상이에요.
Does he have any idea? Do we? Or is director Bong just fucking with us?